I've actually lost 4 of the members. 4 of my writers are no longer with us.
Who are they?
Well, including Michael Kinman, not around anymore. His was the longest piece, and he was dying of AIDS the entire time he was writing his piece. And actually, interesting, how I met him. I'd gotten Fag Rad, which was one of the major gay papers that came out of Stonewall. After Stonewall, Gay Liberation Front, chapters arose all over the country, and they had their papers. And Fag Rad was the paper that came out of Boston, and I definitely wanted that paper in there. And so I hooked up with Charlie Shively, who was one of the key people. He wrote a wonderful piece, which will be in volume 3. And there was another paper that I wanted. It was a paper called Avatar. And I didn't know a lot about it, other than that we used to receive it, we used to exchange with it, and it was a nice looking paper. And I wanted them, and it was also from Boston. So I asked Charlie, now that his piece was done, I said, you know anybody from Avatar? And he says, well, I don't know anybody who was intimate with it, but I know someone who's kind of peripheral, a guy named Michael Kinman. And I wasn't thinking local. So he said, Michael Kinman. I said, oh, okay, where is he now? And he's out in San Francisco. And he gave me his number, and I called him up, and I explained what I was doing, and I said I was looking for someone who could write a history of Avatar. And he said to me, well, he said, I'd be happy to do it, but he said I was really more peripheral to Avatar. I was much more closely associated with a paper from the Midwest. He didn't know where I was calling from. I was from Ann Arbor at the time. He said I was more associated with a paper from the Midwest. And as soon as he said that, that's all he said, from the Midwest, I said, oh, you're Michael Kinman. Which I guess is one of the more obvious statements. I had called him up, I asked for Michael Kinman, and now I'm saying, oh, you're Michael Kinman. What an honor. And, I realized immediately that he was kind of like my spiritual grandfather. Because, the life of underground papers was pretty fast. You had the generation, you had the paper, and then you had Generation, Boat Street Bridge, all those. Then you had Joint Issue, and so that was like 3 generations to me. And so I was the third. He was the first. He was like my spiritual grandfather. But I'd never met him. I'd never met him personally. And all of a sudden, I was now. He said to me, "Well, I could write. What do you want me to write? I could write any one of them." And I made probably the best decision of my literary career. I said, "Just tell me the story. Just write whatever you want." And he wrote this incredible piece. It was the longest piece in the first edition. It was a book. It was literally book length. And that's why in this new iteration, the second time around, I knew it had to be a book. It is, it's one of the monographs here. But a great piece. But he was dying of AIDS the entire time he was writing the piece. And 2 months after he finished it, I got a call from his partner that Michael had died. And Micah, actually he changed his name to Micah when he was out in California, Berkeley. Very sad, but we realized we were trying to find publishers to do the book. New York publishers. I had an agent. He was excited about the book, but he was sending it out to publishers, and the publishers were giving me these incredible responses. One guy held on to the book for a long time. The agent finally called him back and said, "What's the story?" He said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot." He said, "I was reading it." But he didn't want to publish it. Loved the book. Great book. I'll read the whole thing, but I don't want to publish it. Another guy gave it a rave rejection. This is what he said. Love the book. Love the book. Not going to publish it. Rave rejection. And so we realized that we had a really good book, but we weren't going to get it published in New York. And so we realized we had to raise the money to do it ourselves. And ultimately we created a press to do it. Micah died along the way, and so we named it Micah Press. And so the first edition of the book was published by Micah Press. Any other?
So what's the equivalent now? Are there internet blogs and stuff that are the equivalent of the underground press? And
Good
what
question.
ones do you read?
Good question. I'm glad you asked it. Yeah, there are a lot of blog sites, a lot of very good blog sites. And I consider the blogs today to be the successors of the underground press. I mean, they're the good blogs, the political ones. But interestingly enough, I don't think the bloggers have any knowledge at all of what we did. That's one of the reasons I wanted to get this right. And they have no idea. They have no idea. And I'll tell you,
I think they invented that.
well, they have no idea where they're from. Well, partly because the newspaper, the journalism schools, they don't talk about it. The underground press was the high point. You know, with the possible exception of the muckrakers at the beginning of the 1900s. Other than that, no exception, the underground press was the high point of American journalism in our country. And you'd think that every journalism school would talk about it. None of them do.
Why not?
They don't want to talk about the anti-war. But I know they don't. And the blog site I happen to like the most is a blog site called Daily Kos.
Oh, yeah.
People familiar with that? Okay, Daily Kos. Kos is named after Marcos Moulitsas, who founded it. And so my idea was to approach Marcos to write the foreword to the book. Now, two of the forewords in here are written by Abe Peck, who was the editor and publisher of Chicago Seed, one of the great papers, and also William Kunstler, who most of you, I'm sure, know. He's not living anymore, but both of their pieces are carried over in this edition. But for a new one, I wanted a blogger to write the piece, specifically because I wanted to be able to draw the connection between the two periods. And so I invited Marcos, who was the publisher and founder and editor of Daily Kos. And interestingly, I sent him some chapters from the book, and I invited him to do it. And he wrote back to me, and he said, "Ken, I'd love to write it," but he said, I'll got to be honest, I don't know a thing about the underground press. And I said, "I know you don't, Marcos. I just read your book. It talks about all the politics of." It's a good book, very good book. It talks about politics and how the blogs are influencing politics. And he talks a little bit about, comparing the now to the 60s and 70s. And he never once mentions the underground press. He doesn't say it's good, he doesn't say it's bad, he just doesn't mention it. And so I said to him, "Marcos, I know you don't. I read your book." I said, "What I'm looking for is for you to read the stories and have, what I want you to do is show how your mind has been opened up by this. That's what I'm looking for, because I want you to be able to send that, I want your name associated with it so other bloggers can see." And that's what he did, a really nice piece, which is in this volume. Yeah?
I imagine that a lot of this influenced a young Michael Moore with the Flint voice.
He was during that period, he was kind of at the end of...
Mother Jones.
What's that?
Mother Jones.
Well, he was kind of at the end of the underground press period. I'm sure he was influenced. He founded the Flint Voice, came to town. He created the Michigan Voice, which was the Flint Voice blown out throughout the state. And some of us wrote for that, actually, for a period. It didn't last long. There were a lot of, disputes, political disputes and so on. And so people didn't really gravitate to him. And so and then he started working with Mother Jones, and so I think he dropped the idea anyhow.
Can you recount any early recollections of working with the Peace Education Center?
Is the Peace Education Center person asking me this? To me, the Peace Education Center was just such an important part of that period that anytime there was an event, I was at it. There were certain things you just did every day in your life. You went to, if there was a demonstration, you were there. If there was no demonstration, you organized one, and then you were there. If the Peace Education Center had an event, you went to it. And I was there all the time. I wasn't one of the hardcore members of it, because I was doing the joint issue, and that really was a full-time experience. But Peace Center wrote articles in joint issue often. The way we did it was anytime community people wanted to publish an article, the pages were always open to them. So the Peace Center publicized their events on a regular basis, and we were there. They had potluck dinners. We were there. Love potlucks.
They still have potluck dinners.
Well, you know what? So do we. How many people? Let me ask you this: how many people in Lansing ever went to our pre-Thanksgiving Sunday potluck dinners? Okay, I know some of you guys did. Okay, we're still having them. Okay, this year, and consider this an invitation. Okay, this year. Pre-Thanksgiving Sunday, same date every year, Sunday before Thanksgiving.
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock, thank you. It's going to be our 30th. Is that cool? I mean, the
Word.
30th annual pre-things here. Excellent. Yeah.
Such a right-wing grip on this country right now, but you see what's happening in Madison. They had a rally at the Capitol
Good stuff, good
Saturday. I mean, what hope is there for us to turn this debate around?
You know, George Jackson said that it's got to be, you know, really bad before it gets good again. I can't remember the exact words he used, but basically, and he was the first one to say that. A lot of therapies say this also, that you have to feel the pain before you can make the change. But we're feeling pain now. I mean, if this doesn't bring change, nothing will.
550,000 signatures will bring a recall election.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
That ain't that many.
Yeah, the right wing has no idea what they're up against. And we've just begun to fight.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Can
Thank
I,
you.
Can I just want
Oh,
to
go
say,
ahead, go ahead.
I just want to say that what you're doing is so important. I mean, this was an amazing period, and I think everybody here, just about everyone here that's our age, went through this, and they know what you know and what you understand is that this was very significant what happened. We actually stood up and told our parents and the people who were running the show at that time that we were involved in some very bad things. We were killing some people that didn't deserve to die, and we were in fights that we shouldn't have been in. And we told them, and they didn't like it. And they really cracked down on us hard. And they're still fighting us. They're trying to take everything away from the baby boomers. They're trying to destroy our Social Security, everything, you know. They're trying to make us go away because they didn't like it. We stood up and we spoke truth to the powerful. And they didn't like what they saw reflected in our faces. They didn't want to admit that they were involved in something that wasn't good. Now, things have changed a lot since then. But it was a big thing, and it was a scary thing, in spite of all the fun we had. We all paid a huge price for what we did, and who knows what would have happened had the Vietnam War had been. There probably would have been something else. But the country has a right-wing mean streak in it. We got it probably from enshrining slavery in our Constitution, and it just followed us like a demon, and we're exercising it. And every generation has to stand up and say no to this tendency that we have until we become the kind of country and the kind of place we want to be, which is, you know, and we're working the problem. We got a president now who understands more than most presidents have. He's in the bubble now, so he's kind of like gone down the rabbit hole. But I mean, you know, we've made some progress, I think, and hopefully we'll continue to make some. But this history of the underground press is very important, and people like you, I don't know how many there are. You may be the only one. I don't know, but it's got to be preserved, and people someday have got to understand this is a major thing in our history.
Well, I appreciate that, and
I appreciate what you're doing.
And let me do a quick plug. You know, academic presses are not the presses that invest a lot of money into books. I mean, they just don't have the money, and so we're really counting on all of us to get the word out. And so any help you can give. I mean, certainly, you know, if you like the presentation, put it out on Facebook. If you didn't like the presentation, pretend you weren't here, okay? But if you liked it, get it out there, because I really need help getting the word around. If you got some spare money that you want to give to MSU Press, they can use some donations. The key is you have to make out the check to MSU Press and earmark it on the bottom, Voices from the Underground. My website is voicesfromtheunderground.com. So check that out and talk about the whole series. I have the tables of contents of all 4 books. So check that out. Really interesting. You see all the testimonial quotes. A lot of real good stuff on that website. Yeah, Bruce.
Well, I think most people in this room know this, but perhaps not everybody, that the MSU Library Special Collections has a ton of that stuff from that era. Randy Scott has done an excellent job for decades preserving
It's one of the best. It's
all
an
that
incredible.
material. And, you know, it's down there in the MSU Library Special Collections.
MSU, the Special Collections Library was one of the main libraries that I used when I was tracking down people. MSU also, I don't know if they, anymore, but they used to have this incredible phone book collection. And so I would go to Special Collections Library, find all the names, and then I would go to the phone books and look them all up. It was really really helpful to me.
Could
Yeah.
we get a group picture with you after we're done?
A group picture?
Yeah, with everybody.
People want, I'm all for it. There's a lot of love. Is this a lot of love?
Yeah.
Thank you.